Aldea, good morning, and I'm so excited to introduce you to a very good friend of mine named Devin Wright. Say hello, Devin.
Hello. It's good to be with you.
As many of you know, I spent 6 years in Seattle, and the last 2 of those years I spent working with, but I would also say working for Devin at Missiongathering Bellevue, and it was just a wonderful experience. I learned so much from Devin, who is the pastor and still is the pastor of Missiongathering Bellevue, and I thought, what a wonderful opportunity to be able to introduce him to you. I know that over the past couple of years, you've had the opportunity to hear from some other people who are facilitating communities like our own in other parts of the world, and just to learn about what is it like to do spiritual community in open-hearted ways and inclusive ways, in ways that are innovating in the world. And so I'm just really thrilled to get the opportunity to chat with Devin and for you to get to know him and learn a bit more about what his work in the world is and what his heart's like. And so, yeah, I'm really appreciate you having this conversation. And I wanted to start off, as someone who knows your story, and for those of us, people like myself and people in the Aldea community, there are many stories of evolving faith, evolving spirituality, having a faith journey that looks different now than it did when you were a child. And I know for you, you've had a really unique journey of your faith and spirituality evolving, not just on your own, but with your family. And that's part of your family story. So feel free to start at the beginning and just let us know who you are and what your journey's been like. Yeah.
Well, first, Aldea, you are so lucky and blessed. It's such a gift that you get to experience the leadership and heart of Jake. I was really sad when you stole him away from us, but I forgive you. I'm really glad that he's with you. Yeah, thanks for having me on your podcast show today.
Something like that. Yeah.
Podcast sermon show. I grew up in a Southern Baptist evangelical conservative family from, 5th generation Southern Baptist pastor. I think my dad was. And then my whole extended family was Southern Baptist. I was thinking about this the other day. I grew up in this culture of Christianity is, and my version of Christianity is the only true way. Even Catholics were not true Christians. And I remember thinking when we share our testimonies of here's how horrible our life was and how bad we were. And then we said the sinner's prayer and look how great our life is. And I didn't really have that. I just always remembered being a Christian and having an easy life, following the rules and doing everything I was supposed to do, being compliant, being obedient. And it was comforting to know that I had the truth. And with that comfort was this fear of, but what if I didn't say the sinner's prayer right? What if I disobey? Because if I disobey my parents, I disobey God, and then God will punish me. And that's all the Sunday school stories taught me. And so if that's the case, what if I go to hell for all of eternity because I did that? So there's this tension of God loves me, but I don't deserve it. And I just think now, imagine if my parents would have told me those words, we love you, but you don't deserve it. You deserve eternal conscious torment. You deserve to be separated from everyone you love. But we love you. Yeah. It just doesn't, it feels gross saying that now, but that's how I grew up thinking. Yeah. And then it changed in college, religious studies, learned about ways of seeing the Bible that I never knew. So I'd go home to my dad, who was a pastor, and say, did you know this about the Gospel of Mark? And there was a second ending that was added later. My dad would be like, yeah, they taught me that in the 70s in my Southern Baptist seminary. And they said, don't teach this to your congregations or you will get fired. But this is true. And I realized that even Southern Baptist evangelical world was more progressive in the past before kind of the fundamentalist takeover. And it just freed me up to I can open up how I see the Bible and how I see the God. And I don't have to be as judgmental towards others. I don't have to feel like I have the right way. I don't have to be afraid that everyone around me is going to hell unless I tell them about Jesus.
Yeah.
So that was, for some people, deconstruction is terrifying, but for me, it was really freeing. And it helped to be able to walk alongside with my dad. And he's like, yeah, this is valid. This is the okay way to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that for many people, it's equally terrifying and freeing. You know, I know for me, my experience of my faith expanding was really exciting because there was so much actually finally resonated with me, like what you're talking about. And at the same time, there's fear of losing community and the organizations and the things that have been, you know, the relationships that have been a part of our lives. Are we sacrificing those for these ideals? So a lot of times people will experience a shift in their beliefs, and then it can often even disconnect them from their family. But it sounds like for you, your dad, who is also a pastor, you were able to connect over this.
Yeah, we kind of bonded over it. And while I had that family connection with my immediate family, it was a little bit more tense with some extended family because they were still in that Southern Baptist world. But the real loss came from my dad's church that he had started 15 years prior. My dad started realizing that his tradition is very judgmental towards the LGBTQ community. And he realized I don't actually know anyone in the LGBTQ community. I wonder what their experience with church has been, because they need Jesus. That was his thinking was at the time. So he started having conversations with people who were gay and realized how much harm and abuse they'd experienced by their families and Christian pastors and leaders. And so he just gave a sermon that said, this is wrong, how we've treated the LGBTQ community. And that set him on a path of, well, maybe the Bible's not inerrant, and maybe it's not the Word of God in the sense that it is the instruction manual for life. So he started teaching from the pulpit those radical, heretical ideas, and they fired him from his church, and so lost all of our closest family, friends and church family that we'd had my entire life. It was gone. But out of it came a church community that was progressive and inclusive in Southwest Missouri and modern, and realized that there are so many people out there who've been told they're not allowed to ask questions in church. It's dangerous. So to just have a space that was safe where no matter what you believe, you can talk about it and ask questions about it. And out of that became more and more open and inclusive and progressive. But that was like the starting point of the church. What if we had a church where you could ask questions? You could challenge the doctrinal statement.
Your dad starts this new church, and you are super involved in that community. What did you learn from your experience in that community, and what are some of the things that really defined, as you described, progressive community in Southern Missouri, which sounds like an oxymoron, but it's possible?
Yeah. Some of the things that defined it are, questions are more important than answers. Curiosity is more important than certainty. That faith, a need for certainty is the opposite of faith. A faith is meaning be open and curious and trusting, even if you don't know what the hell to think or do. Just be open. And that's faith. And then be yourself. Like churches, even the old Southern Baptist hymn, come just as you are. It's great that it was in that song, but churches did not make you feel that way. No, you had to keep a smile on your face. If something was wrong in your life, it's because there was some sin in your life. It's because you were doing something wrong. So to have a space where that wasn't true anymore, and you could come as you are, meaning you could wear what you want, you could be as goofy and ridiculous as you want, and you can actually express your honest, authentic personality. And so church became not about salvation to get to heaven and out of hell, but salvation to heal from all of the stories that the world and society and our parents and church have taught us about who we are, and to connect with our true self, which is God in us. Yeah. And so when that happens, naturally just people come who have been marginalized because they feel for the first time this safe and seen.
So then you move to Seattle and you become the pastor.
Yeah, we were
of the
like, we got to
church.
get the hell out of Missouri. Been there our whole lives. We don't want to turn 80 years old and be like, we lived in Springfield, Missouri our entire life.
Yeah.
So I got connected to Missiongathering through the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, and they planning a church and said, you want to come do it? And we said, sure, we'll give it a shot. And that was 2019. And you came on board, was it 2021?
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it during COVID?
It was during COVID, and you you only had a couple of months before
Yeah, we only had
COVID.
about 6 or 8 months. Got to the church. There were like 5 people in the church when we got there. We grew to about 50 people, and then shut down, went online for COVID, and kind of changed the dynamic of what we did, what church looked like. Yeah. Went from meeting every week on a Sunday morning, doing the typical worship service, 3 songs and a sermon, to doing online church or pub theology, meet at a bar, and you all do cheers and chats. And same kind of thing. Church of the Wild, where we meet in a park and do some meditation and prayer, service projects. So we just we didn't have a building, and people didn't want to go to church all the time, especially in the Pacific Northwest, where you had the fallout from Mars Hill, Mark Driscoll, and people are just hesitant to go to church and mistrust. They don't trust church very well.
Yeah.
And so why keep doing church the same way if people don't want to come all the time and for that expression of church?
Missiongathering seems to be really a community that's particularly geared and sensitive towards advocating for and addressing the needs of people who have been marginalized and disenfranchised because of their gender identity, sexual identity. So just share with us a little bit about what that journey's been for you, and maybe now what it means to be kind of in that particular cross-section of spiritual community, really working with people who have felt deep hurt from being excluded because of their sexuality, and then now are experiencing healing and inclusion and restoration.
Yeah, it's out of those really hard experiences that new, healthy, life-giving things can be birthed. I grew up with the view that being gay was a choice, that everyone is born straight. And then in college, Kylie, my spouse, went to an Assemblies of God school, and some of her best friends there were gay, and they'd come over for dinner and came out to us and talked about it and heard his story and how much abuse he'd experienced because of it, and his sexual identity, thoughts of suicide. And he said, if being gay was a choice, I would not choose this. I would choose to be straight because I do not want to. I hate the feeling that I shouldn't be alive because of my sexuality. So of course I would choose to be straight. Yeah. And that was just, well, duh.
Yeah.
We make so many assumptions about people that we don't even have a relationship with. And that goes with people on the other side of politics and anything. But yeah, so all of my assumptions broke down at that point. And it was freeing for me to be like, okay, I can look at this a different way. And so my dad helped me through that a lot, of like, Jesus in his ministry was focused on the marginalized. His opening words in his inaugural address, I came to set the oppressed free. I mean, and now as a church that's predominantly LGBTQIA, we get criticism from some more conservative Christians that we're obsessed with gays, we're obsessed with LGBTQ, we're obsessed with the pride flag. No, that's not true. We are intensely passionate about people who have been marginalized, abused, and hurt by Christian communities. And we're going to be loud about that. And for people who aren't willing or able to understand that, or not at a place where they can see that, they don't understand why we would put such an emphasis on it, especially if there's still the view of, well, this is a choice and it's out of God's will and standard. But yeah, and I think I connected with the LGBTQIA community because I grew up in a community where I was not allowed to be my authentic self, or my voice didn't matter, or what mattered was my authority figures and my parents and my Sunday school teacher and youth leaders. And so I wasn't allowed to vocalize my needs or wants or desires. And gosh, anyone who's LGBTQIA knows that in such a deeper way, I can't be my honest, authentic self around these people. And there is serious risk and danger if I were to do that. And yeah, it goes back to creating spaces where people don't have that risk. And that's the way of Jesus. It's not, we're a Christian community, part of a Christian tradition. And it's all rooted in how Jesus interacted with people. It's biblical. We're not throwing out the Bible. We're trying to follow what Jesus did in the Bible.
I know that for you, recently graduated from seminary. So I was going to say cemetery, something.
Cemetery.
Recently graduated from seminary, and the particular kind of stream of seminary that you are part of has a focus on process theology. And as someone who hasn't dove super deep into process theology, but just my basic understanding of it, it seems like a really beautiful way of looking at the divine unfolding throughout the universe. We talk a lot, at Aldea about how the universe is in this big, just elongated process of unfolding and becoming more aware and love coming to being throughout the universe as things become more and more complex. So I'm curious if you would just share a little bit about your take on process theology, maybe in a more layman's terms, and just what
I don't know any other way to do it because I don't know all the fancy language that they used.
Yeah.
It was so confusing when I was in school, but I actually had a book that I bought during seminary to try to help me understand process philosophy, and it was Piglet's Process.
There you go.
It talked about process theology through Winnie the Pooh.
Right. Well, there's the
that's
Tao,
what I needed
there's
to
the
understand.
Tao of Pooh is a
I have
popular
that
book.
too.
So then
It's
you can
similar.
have the process theology of Piglet, and then Eeyore needs something at this point.
True.
Yeah.
Pooh's Process, that would have been a better name for the book.
Yeah, that's a different book entirely.
Yeah. The Process of Pooh. Yeah, anyway. Process philosophy says that everything in the universe is in process. Nothing stays the same. Nothing is static. It's all moving. It's all changing and evolving and growing and reacting and responding to different inputs, and everything's changing. We're spinning thousands of miles an hour through space right now. And so that challenges the classical view of God, that God is unchanging. God never changes. And process philosophy and theology says that it almost combines quantum science, that there is an endless amount of potentials in every single moment. And God is within that realm of potential, infinite potentials of what could happen. And God is working with you in this present moment to lead you towards that potential that is most life-giving, that will help you become and evolve into your true self, which is God expressed through you. And you're just every single moment constantly trying to co-create with God, as opposed to God controlling every single thing that happens in the universe, which helps me because I've walked alongside so many people who grew up in this conservative Christian background of God is in control. So if my child dies of cancer, there must be a reason. God needed another angel. God's testing me. We could try to come up with all these reasons. How could a good God allow such horrible things to happen? And we all wrestle with that. And this allows for God to be more human, which isn't a non-Christian idea, because we say that Jesus was the expression of God. So if God can be human, then let God be human and to feel like what we feel and to grieve and to meet us where we're at and to walk alongside. And so that's an overview, I guess, a snippet of process.
But it seems like something that can really be embodied because, in my experience, what we think about God in a lot of ways precedes what we're able to think about ourselves. So if we have this view that God or the universe is this static, unchanging thing, then we often see ourselves the same way. We reject seeing ourselves in process, that there must be a particular way that things are supposed to be and we're supposed to go. And when we can see God, the universe, as something dynamic, as something in process, as something changing and evolving together, we can give ourselves room to be in process, ourselves room to be unfinished. What do you think that, like, going through process theology and allowing that to sort of not just become an intellectual idea, but an embodied experience has changed the way that you live?
Yeah, process theology has kind of given me extra permission. I've always wanted to think this way, but there's pushback in my tradition that all things are sacred, all things belong, that there is no separation between spirit and matter. And it's not spirit is good, matter is bad, spirit is good, your body is bad. It's all soaked in spirit. And in the quantum world, you'd say it's all energy. It's all vibration of energy. It's what everything is made of. And that's what we're made of. And so everything is one. There is no separation. And so you tie that to these Christian ideas. Paul writing, nothing can separate you from the love of Jesus. Nothing on earth or below or above, which is true. Nothing can separate you from energy because you are energy. When Jesus told the crowd, you are the light of the world. You are light. You're literally made up of photons and energy and light. And that is spirit in you. So it just kind of helped all of these ideas come together of seeing God in a bigger way and the world in a bigger way. And my responsibility now as a Christian is not to get people to convert to Christianity, which is what I was taught, and do all the right things to keep God from getting mad at me. My responsibility is to be the image of God in the world, is to be that energy, that light, and to co-create with that energy, to create things that are life-giving and, that address those injustices in the world, those systems that marginalize people. And a lot of those are within Christianity and need to be broken down. And I'm frustrated and tired of a lot of the tradition I came out of. And so I have to be really mindful that I am healing those parts of me and loving those parts of me rather than being bitter and then othering the tradition that I grew up in. But I now see so much value in the tradition I grew up in.
What feeling do you get about the future of, whether you want to say spirituality, religion, spiritual community, church, Do you have any hopes for what that might look like in the future? And do these kind of gatherings help encourage you?
I think the future of Christianity is no Christianity. Or the future of Christianity is a Christianity which is inclusive of all other ways of trying to talk about and understand the divine. I think ideally the future would be a world where everyone is driven by love, not certainty and needing to be right. And are able to see that while I hold this tradition of Christianity and the language and the ideas and the symbols to be meaningful to me, it doesn't mean it's going to be meaningful to someone else on the other side of the world. And we should not have any expectation that they need to think like we do. But I mean, I see it combining with, again, quantum science. And Jesus said the most important thing is love God and love your neighbor as yourself. Father Richard Rohr of the Catholic Franciscan tradition. I don't know have you talked about Rohr any all day?
They know.
They know.
They know.
Okay, good. Just making sure. It says that God is just another word that we use for all of reality, everything that is. The consciousness, awareness of consciousness that makes up all of the cosmos. So love God. Love everything.
Yeah.
Just love all that is.
Yeah.
Love your neighbor as yourself. You see that there's no separation between me and you. What I do to you, I do to myself. And Jesus said, what you do to the least of these, you do to me. Like there is no separation. And I think the future has to be more of an awareness of that. I hope.
Yeah.
And I think it is changing. But the people who are more in the fundamentalist camp, that's their passion, is preserving the status quo. And they tend to be the loudest.
Yeah.
So it's harder to see sometimes those communities that are evolving and changing.
Yeah. Well, I just want to affirm that my opportunity of getting to know you and participate in the work that you're doing, it gave me a sense of confidence of what's possible in that future of church, that future of spirituality, that future of religion. I believe that just by places like Missiongathering or Aldea existing, it does speak to this larger shift, and it just tells the world that it's possible to do community in a different way, to have this kind of inclusive form of spiritual gathering. And so just want to thank you for all the mentoring and time that we spent together that gave me that hope, like, oh, this is possible. This is a real thing.
It goes both ways for sure. Yeah. Yeah, you were such an encouragement. Your energy and creativity just kept me going on all of the days when I was like, what are we doing? Is this going to work? And it's hard because, most of Missiongathering are people who came from evangelical backgrounds and they have trust issues with the church.
Yeah.
And how do you plant a church for people who don't want to go to church?
Right.
How do you plant a church and grow a church for people who don't want to give money to a church because they have trust issues?
Right. Rightfully so, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to raise money and yet you don't want to repeat the harm that's happened to people, which is
manipulative and coercive. And if you don't give, God will punish you. If you do give, God will bless you. All those stories that people are told. But then you realize, and you start seeing the stories of people saying, if it wasn't for this community, I wouldn't be alive. And when people realize the value of that, like this is important, they're more likely to support that, Yeah. And they see those. So like the communities that you're building, like Aldea, are not only life-giving, but life-saving for people who have come from those harmful religious backgrounds.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Yeah.
And it's important that people recognize that and support it. And that's the only way it's going to keep going.
It's definitely can be challenging and risky and scary and messy being on kind of the front lines of a movement that is still in process, right? As all things are, and still evolving. But for me, one of the most important things has been the friendships that have been made along the way. So I'm just grateful to know you and the friendship that has developed. And I think for all of you, you can attest to that, despite the complexity of being in this unique, spiritual life that we're all living and evolving, the relationships that are made on the way are not only one of the most beautiful aspects of it, but they're also how we experience the divine, how we encounter God. Because if God is another way of saying that which is in all things, right? And it's the relationship between everything, then it's in community that we connect to one another. So as we close today, I encourage you to leave today with a spirit of community, a spirit of connecting with others. Maybe take an opportunity to make a connection with someone that you haven't before today. And I just want to thank you all for joining us today. And again, another big thank you for Devin for spending some time with me on this rainy Seattle morning, which actually is what I'm guessing is a very sunny and warm Tucson morning. So much love from us to you, and thank you, Devin.
Thank you, Jake. I appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody.